I gotta say, one of the most incredible moments in life is when you're triggered by the same old stuff and you react differently. It makes you feel very powerful. It makes you feel like, you've you've moved up the ladder, or you've made your way to the next level in the game. And this happened to me. I just came back from visiting my folks, and I can only ever stay like 2 to 3 days because it's just not for me. It's so high tension. I don't understand people that seem to desire causing drama. And unfortunately, my dad is one of those people where something will set him off and he will just go and go and go and go. And he just loops on it. And I feel bad for him in a way because by proxy of being his kid, I picked up some of that and in my adult life, which I've unwound. But it's not a good way to be. It's so painful to oneself, you know? It's very painful to stay in those states. And my dad is not doing well. He's old. He's 77. Last time I saw him, his health was pretty bad and it's been declining since. So I try to tell him, like, hey, like, I think you're killing yourself with all this stress that you cause. And of course, he doesn't believe he causes it, but, no one else is trying to start problems. Everyone else just wants to be chill. But I was really grateful because I was like, are you kidding me? It was a moment where my anger came online and it made me realize I've had a faulty narrative for basically my entire adult life. So I'll tell you a little bit about it. It might resonate. If you have any anger problems, it might resonate. If you have like a tumultuous relationship or you did with your parents, it could resonate. But when I was a kid, for as long as I can remember, I became like a protector of my mom and of my siblings because my dad was just a tyrant. He would just get so angry all the time. And it'd make me angry because he's like lashing out on everyone, And I would step in. I was the only one. It was like, he would put it on me, like, you're the one causing drama. I'm like, I'm just trying to protect everyone else from you. But, when you're a kid and you have that kind of dynamic and you don't have a parent that helps you through your emotions, they can get very big and scary. You can go into the red, like I like to call it. And once you see red, not like, kill someone, but when you have that fire in you, like you think you could, which is a place I got to with anger towards my dad and how he would be so abusive, especially to my mom, physically abusive and just say the meanest, cruelest things. There were a few times it felt like God was talking me off a ledge, saying, don't do this. This isn't worth your future. This isn't worth regretting this later. This isn't it. Don't do it. But as I grew older, I found myself, for many reasons, drawn to cannabis, weed. And it helped me self-suppress some of these really dark feelings. It also helped me with my anxiety, which I had a lot of at the time, so I'm very grateful for that. But it also suppressed me. And after a while, after many years of smoking, all the time, I took a few breaks, but it was pretty consistent. I liked that it did that. I liked that it suppressed my anger because I felt like I was in control, that no one was going to take control. No one was going to be able to get me into that state, which I felt really like something bad could happen in. But what I realized just recently, which now makes a narrative I was telling myself completely inaccurate, but yet it ruled my life for many years, was that I always had control of my anger. So this moment happens with my dad. He does this thing a couple days ago, and he's just looping and not listening, and he gets very threatening towards my mom. And I let my anger do the talking. And I instill a bit of fear into him. And that was my goal. I don't intend to do that ever, but this is the kind of guy who just doesn't listen to reason. He's not emotionally there in the way that most people are. He grew up in a time where you forced everything. And in his eyes, this is what I learned when visiting him, because we had a talk after it was all said and done. We actually got a lot closer, so I'm grateful for that. But this story is about me and anger and reflecting on how I had this narrative that just wasn't real, and how all of these parts of us are just so important to our integrity and to who we are, and to be whole and complete. And when we push those parts away, we're pushing away fundamental parts of us that just want to be loved and have a space, you know? But we got to be able to trust ourselves that we'll manage it. So if we don't feel like we can trust ourselves, we will push these parts away, right? Or if we have a lot of shame. So my dad told me he thinks it's weak if a man is compassionate, if he's understanding, if he doesn't raise his voice, if he doesn't instill fear. Which is hilarious to me, because it was after me complimenting him for doing better, for learning to be better as he aged. And he made it out like, no, actually, I'm actually becoming weak. I'm like, we live on completely two different, like, planes of existence, you know? I don't believe that force and fear and control does anything. It doesn't work. It only works with people who are also weak. You know, if, like, it just doesn't work for anyone who's halfway, has self-esteem, self-respect. It just doesn't work. Like, the only way that can work is if you, like, but it doesn't even work then, because then you just have people that fear you. He was the kind of dad that would instill fear, not love and respect, but fear, you know? And I just can't see how it's working for him. But he doesn't see that. He does not see that. So anyways, this moment happened, and I was so grateful that my anger came online. It was like I was moving in slow motion. It was like, wow, I do have my anger. It's here. It just is not necessary most of the time to be angry. But I'm whole, I'm complete. And it felt really magical, you know? And being really stern with my dad. Could be because he's really frail now. His health is declining. Not sure if I mentioned that already, but he tried to do his typical stuff again the next day, and I shut it down. It was like he had a bit of fear. Like, we were playing, I used to love playing Monopoly when I was a kid, and my parents, for my sake, played. I didn't even want to play, but they wanted to play with me, so I was like, okay, fine, we can play. And he was just being, I forget exactly what he said, you know, that's how it goes in these moments, but he said something to my mom, and I was sitting across, and I said something like, why do you have to be so nasty? Why can't you just, I don't know, I said something about that, and I was like staring at him, and he looked away. Act of submission, yes. I'm laughing, but, like, you don't understand what kind of guy this was, you know? I've never met someone, actually, yeah, I have. I've met one person who's similar to him, but I haven't met many people that are like this kind of person. And it's sad because, you know, when you really know the mechanics behind it, it makes you feel really sad for people like that. You know, my dad has always been very fearful of the world, very scared, very close-minded. And anything he doesn't understand, which is a lot, he fears or condemns. And a lot of people like that. It's not unusual. It's just sad, you know? It's not the way I live the world. I don't live my life in fear. I don't do that. But yeah, anyways, these parts of us coming home, you know, I think we're given such an opportunity when we get triggered. It's an opportunity to learn about ourselves, to see how we could do things a bit differently in the future. And it gives us power when we're not putting, like, nothing outside us can take that power. You know, I think for me it was like, oh, there was like a level of disconnect in a way that made it so incredible, that made me realize, like, no, you're good. You have all these parts of you, you know, that will be activated at certain times. But the main thing was, oh, I totally lost my train of thought, but I got back on it. So the lie that I told myself for so long was that I couldn't manage my anger. And that's one of the reasons I smoked so much weed for so long. Because I didn't want it to come out. I was just too scared. But the truth is, there's no one like my dad. You know, there's no one like that. Like, he's sadistic. And I don't say that lightly. He literally smiles when other people are in pain. It's pretty sick and twisted, if you ask me. Any way I spin it, I mean, I can empathize because he didn't have a good upbringing. He had a very bad upbringing, really. And so it caused a lot of psychological damage. But at the same time, I feel really bad for people like that, you know? How do you live in this world like that, you know? Like, do you have to inflict pain on others, or you inflict it on yourself? Is that how it goes? I don't know. But why I realized it was a lie, and why I'm laughing, and why I feel very whole and complete in this moment is because even as a child, I had self-control. It was always ever just the fear of not having self-control that led this self-suppression journey with anger to limit it. I remember there were times I broke up with partners that I had because I was worried that I was too angry, too upset, and that it was too much for them. And that doesn't give anyone a good opportunity, you know, especially when it's a faulty belief. Well, those were like early relationships, you know, when you're first getting triggered and you're like, oh my gosh. But I don't know. I just feel really grateful to have opportunities that I get triggered. I learned so much about myself. I learned about how I want things to go. I realized the ways that I am not reacting or acting right. And I have way more curiosity around all these things nowadays. I've built a muscle of curiosity versus judgment. And it's made life so much fun. It's made me want to seek out moments that are challenging, triggering, and that allow me to grow. But how funny. I wonder what else is going on that I'm just... You know, you ever think about that? Like, what sort of beliefs do you have that are just like completely untrue, and how they're just ruling your life and your choices? It's funny after a while. Not like a dismissive funny, but like, what can you do? It's just funny. Like, this human experience is funny. All these things we get so worked up over. Or we make like a pillar of our personality, you know, and it's just like... I don't know, but you know what I'm saying. So thanks for hanging out as always. Feeling good. I am also listening to this book if you're interested in any books. It was one of the best books I've listened to. I don't really read a lot, but I listen to books in a long time, and it's called You Are the One You Were Waiting For. I think that's what You Are the One You Were Waiting For. It has to do with internal family systems. It's about like all these parts in you, these different voices, these parts that were exiled. So like for me, anger at a young age was exiled because it was shamed and ridiculed. When I would get justifiably angry at my dad being a tyrant and abusive towards my mom, he would then turn it on me, say I'm a, you know, horrible child. He's going to send me away. You know, I don't deserve, you know, anything. You know, all that stuff. So after a while, you know, I internalized that shame around my anger, as well as the other things that I mentioned. But we exile parts of ourselves to stay safe, to stay in control. But it causes a lot of problems because realistically, when you're whole, you do have all these parts. So anyways, thanks so much for hanging out as always. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you when I see you. Take care.